Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Fix Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary.
Hey guys, hope you're having a fantastic day and got some inspiration from Amelia and Daniel's story of marriage after rape. Today, we are going to talk about money. Yes, we spoke about money already in episode 63 with Suzanne Johnson. There we spoke about making budgets, getting yourself out of debt, creating a financial plan, and things like that. In today's episode, we're going to be speaking about money fights. No, really about disagreements and how to get your partner on board and what happens if you disagree on different things and how you could go and create that safe space to talk about money because yes, some people just can't talk about it. So I'm really excited for this. It's going to be a little bit different perspective and let's get to it. Thank you so much, Ericka Young, for being here. I'm really excited to get started. But just before we start, guys, if you're going to want to find out more information about this and how you could have this conversation and really get your money in control, go to www.7daymoneychallenge.com. I'll put all the links in your show notes so you'll be able to go and find her. You want to start by telling us your story and how you got out of debt and got involved in Dave Ramsey's program.
Yes. So first of all, it started with my husband was carpooling with someone, and to pass the time for that 45 minutes to an hour, he found Dave Ramsey on the radio and he said, okay, you've got to listen to this guy. And my whole life was turned upside down because he took my credit cards and I was like, what is going on? And I realized, I do need some financial therapy here because I was hiding, a lot of purchases and things from my husband. And it might have been small stuff, but it was preventing us from really moving ahead financially. And so,
do you think that those small purchases got in the way of your own relationship with him?
It got in the way of the relationship I had with money, and then it prevented he and I from really being successful. I honestly was pretty forthright when he took the credit cards. I was like, doggone it, because we had to look at the balances. I mean, if you want to get out of debt, you got to look at the balances. And so if I was unwilling to be honest, that yes would have gotten into the middle of our relationship. But because I, sheepishly had to put my tail between my legs and say, you know what, I've got to be honest here. If this is what we're doing, we can't go forward without honesty. And this is where I am at. I've been, using these credit cards. And so that would be detrimental to us trying to get out of debt.
So did you find that because all of a sudden you had to be this extra honest, you became closer to your partner after that?
I think for us, yes. I think that's difficult for a lot of couples, to be honest. Like he and I really had purposed in our heart that we were going to do something different than what our families showed us. There was a lot of dishonesty, a lot of mistrust, things like that in our families, and we didn't want that. And I was kind of going down that path like right away. And so when we had to have a reckoning with our debt, I was like, okay, you know what? Let me humble myself and let's figure this out as a team. And that's why I like to call couples team couples. If they're working to go in the same direction, do the same thing as a team, they will be able to conquer anything. And we, in fact, got out of nearly $100,000 in debt over the next 5 years after we had that heart-to-heart conversation and really started plowing into this debt. And so I really believe that you can do anything if you and your partner are on the same page.
So how long were you married for at this point?
Well, we were married for a year when he found out about Dave Ramsey. It took us another 5 years to get out of debt. And so we were pretty early in our relationship. And honestly, by the time we got out of both of those, like by the time we got out of all of the debt and did those things, I mean, we had 2 kids. So we were still in our 20s, still pretty young and still doing stupid stuff. But we made it a point that this, debt was going to be gone. And so, yeah, that was done before either of us turned 30 years old.
Do you think that affected the fact that you had kids? Like your kids felt deprived or?
They didn't know. They were kind of young. So honestly, they didn't really know. But one thing that I realized, they do latch on to what's happening. We started, facilitating Financial Peace University, and my daughter would come with us, and she was like, "Debit, mommy, not debt, right? Debit." And I was like, "Yes, you got it." So, and honestly, I think that deprivation prevents us from really being able to see all that life has to offer. We never took our dining out all the way down to zero. And I don't teach my clients to take their dining out all the way down to zero, because honestly, that is deprivation. I mean, that's not realistic. People aren't going to do that. And so I want to have a reasonable number in those areas. And honestly, when my kids were little, there was an impromptu Disneyland drive we took when my daughter was about to turn 2, and she would still be free getting into the park. And I was like, you know what? We've got a little extra money here. We drove from Arizona to California, and we ate our lunches in our car, but we enjoyed the park for a weekend, and we did it on a budget. And so we came back home with no new debt. And so I think that it's okay to have both, be able to reach your goals and also enjoy life. And I think that's what a lot of people want to know, is that you're not going to be wearing a straitjacket when you get out of debt.
Yeah. I think that's really important, because people think that, like, oh my goodness, I'm making a budget, I'm now following this thing and I can't have fun anymore. But no, like you said, you make it fun. And
that's right. Find ways to make it fun. That's so important.
Yes. Okay. So if somebody wants to start changing the way they deal with money, what conversations do they need to have with their partner so they're both on the same page?
That is so important. So first of all, the very first conversation that you need to have has nothing to do with the numbers, and it has everything to do with your money past. Talk about how you grew up, what you learned about money when you were a child, what you witnessed when you were a child. Did you have any people in your life that you actually looked up to financially? So for instance, one of my stories is that my grandfather, he wasn't a wealthy man, but he was a pastor. So he always wore his suits, and he, saved money, and he was a widower for a long time. And so he saved money, and he was able to buy my mother a car with cash. And so I admired that about him. I admired that every single time we would have a birthday, he didn't know how to buy toys for kids. He just gave us money. He never lacked for cash money. And so I admired that about him. And so that was a positive experience. I also have negative experiences where I saw theft in my family, and I didn't want to, have my children to see that. I saw mismanagement of money and feast and famine lifestyle as well. And so those were the things that it was important for my husband to know that occurred in my life, so that he can understand the vantage point I'm coming from. Like, it really scares me to live feast and famine, and I don't want our accounts to go down to zero, and that kind of thing. And then why I love cash so much, or why it's important for me to have like a little bit of a cushion in different areas. If you understand your past history with money, then you'll better be able to communicate what your needs are, and your spouse or your partner will be able to effectively meet those needs as well.
So how is your husband's stories different or the same to yours?
Well, that's the beauty of our relationship, is that it was pretty similar. I mean, both of us came from single parent households who really had to work super hard and make ends meet. And so that part was similar. What I will say that was different for him is that he took that experience, and now what I have to learn is that he likes to pile up cash. He likes to really have a bigger savings account than I care about. And I'm like, why do you need this money? And he likes to have money in cash in a safe and these types of things. And though I don't understand it, I understand that it fills a security gland on the inside of him. And so I let him be. It's not detrimental. So I let him be. I may not fully understand it or have that same need, but we get along better if I let him have that. And if I protect that for him and don't misuse and abuse those things that are necessary for him.
Do you have separate accounts, or do you share?
I like sharing accounts. I think I find that when I work with clients, people who have, been single for a longer period of time, or people who have had some mistrust with money in previous relationships and things like that, they tend to prefer having accounts separate. But I actually think, for full disclosure, one account is important. Now, the caveat to that is I'm sure people like to have fun money or gift money or whatever, money that you don't have to like have a conversation about. Nobody wants to have a $2 conversation about what you bought at 7-Eleven, right? So that's totally fine. And that's not what makes or breaks a relationship. It's really about the big things and making certain that those are taken care of. And I do prefer that's in one account, but you kind of have to work through that depending on people's money past. That money history is seriously significant, in my opinion.
So would you suggest, let's say, one account? Obviously, it depends on the situation, but
Mhm.
suggest one account and then they each have like, I guess, like petty cash sort of thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Sometimes it's cash, sometimes it's another account. That's totally fine. That's not, like I said, that's not going to make or break how you guys move forward. And the other part of that is agree on how much that is. So, I mean, if it's $200 or if it's $50, whatever it is, it's totally fine to have that money separated out, because I think a lot of people like to surprise their partner with things, or you don't, like I said, don't want to have to answer to the very small things that happen in life, and still, you can move forward together.
Okay, so now once you understand your partner's history, what's next?
Well, so you got to have a reckoning. You really have to look at the numbers, and I call it a reality check. You need to look at how much debt you have, what are your credit scores, what does a budget look like? You need to look back at your spending history. You need to add up your categories, like how much are you really spending on groceries and dining out and clothing and all the things. This is the hard part, honestly. And I tell people it's okay to have a glass of wine. It's okay to have some chocolate. You might need to put on some mood music or a candle, but time to get into the nitty gritty for your reality check. It's time to make sure that you are looking at the details so you know where to start. It's like when you plug in an address to get to a specific destination, you want to make certain that you know where you are. Like the GPS lady has to identify exactly where you are. So you can't get anywhere if you don't know your starting destination. And that's what the reality check is. It's to assess where you are today so you can see how far you have to go. And when we assessed our situation, honestly, at the time that we first added up our debt, we only had like $65,000 in debt. Now I say only because we went further into debt. Like in those first couple of years, we did stupid and bought another car and all these things. And so it grew to over $90,000 in debt. And
While
so
you were paying off the money, it grew?
we started our journey. And in that first year, we stumbled over ourselves. We weren't fully committed. It took us a while to like really get going. And then we had another baby, honestly. And so the truth is that when you're going through the process, be honest. Like you have to look and see. And if we didn't add it up, we didn't know how far we were going to have to go. So you've got to add it up. You have to see what your patterns and your habits are. And I think that is the next step for couples to really take the time and do. And it may not happen all in one session. It might be this week on Tuesday, we're going to look at it and do that for the whole first month. Maybe it's an hour each week to try and figure it out. Maybe it's taking a course, maybe it's hiring a coach, but you need to go through that process so that you know what you're dealing with. And that is no surprise.
So, okay, so you know your patterns, you know your money. Now, how do you go and break that patterns and not get like you and fall back, but actually stay committed to it?
Yeah. Now, the staying committed part is where I think you need an accountability partner. I really do think that it's important for people to have either a mentor or somebody to say, hey, let's reel this in, or I see these patterns or habits and that kind of thing. You do have to hold another accountable. If it's a couple situation, it's important that you look at each other and say, how can I help you be better? And because that's what we want when we're in a relationship, either be it for financial or any other area of our life. But I think that I'm a big budgeter. I think it's important to write down all of your income and all of your outgo. And so just today, I had a client meeting and I saw that they were spending more. They ended up spending about 10% more on food and specifically dining out. And I said, okay, so is this normal? Is this what the new normal is? Or is there something different about this past season that took you off track? And we talked through that. And they didn't want to increase the budget because that meant something else in the budget was going to have to go down. We've got to balance it. So we went through that process. And I think that's important for people to see what your income is minus all of your outgo. And that is going to show you how aggressive you can be towards either paying off debt or saving money or what have you. Anything that's left over, put back into the budget, either on your debt or on your savings. Go through that process down to your haircuts and getting any nails done, or, clothing, or what the kids need, or what have you. It's important that you get very detailed with that budget.
Okay, so I'm sure that while couples are making these budget, there's a lot of fighting going on.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Sometimes it is. I think, I think that we really have to be, one, easy on ourselves and forgive ourselves for how we messed up. We're human. Everybody's going to make a mistake. I don't do everything right all the time. Where even concerns my own budget, I understand what my own pitfalls are too. And I think that we have to get comfortable with the fact that everybody's got their thing that they're going to spend money on if they so choose. But so knowing yourself is important. But also, I think that if people take the time to talk about your goals, I think couples really need to discuss their shared goals. Where are we going and why do we want to get there? And so my husband and I wanted to change our family tree. And financially, that meant we didn't want to stumble over ourselves the way that our parents did. And true, it was difficult for them being single parents, but we wanted to be really mindful of our spending so that we didn't go down the path of debt, bankruptcy, and not having any cash to enjoy our life. And so get clear about your goals. Everybody might have different ways that they want to accomplish those goals, but get clear on what your goals are. And if your goal is to get out of debt, then let's say, hey, we agree here. We might disagree on the method, but we agree on where we're going. And that is a critical step to take.
Okay, so if you agree on the goal, but you disagree on the method, how do you work that out?
Yeah, I think I say try it. I love saying to couples, let's date this idea. You don't have to marry the idea. Date the idea. Give it some time. Give it a month. See if it works. If it doesn't, let's try something new. I think where we fall into a trap is that we start thinking, wow, like if I'm committed to this, this is forever. No, it's not. You can change your mind. You're in control of how the budget works or how you do it. And I would say, one good thing for couples to do is to see who is the nerd, who's the money nerd, and who's like the free spirit, or the one that brings all the fun into the relationship. I think the nerd is the one who needs to think about what's going to work best, and then just come with questions like, what do you think about this, versus telling the other spouse or the other partner what to do. If you tell somebody what to do, they're going to naturally recoil and say, this is not what I'm talking about. I don't need to be told by you. I don't need another mother, or I don't need another father. Right. So come with the right attitude. And like I said, try it out. See if the idea sticks. If it doesn't, be willing and be open to trying something different, because you need to figure out what's going to work for your household. And you don't want to be stuck in one habit that's not going to serve you both well. So just play with it and see where it goes from there.
Okay, so that's good. Like it makes it less scary and easier to handle.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay, now you made these goals, you made these plans, you're working really hard on it, but for some reason, your partner keeps on slipping up. How do you make sure not to get so mad at them?
Yeah. Well, you're going to have your emotions, and money will take you there. And first of all, we have to realize we're imperfect people, and we're not going to be perfect in this whole journey. And so, one, you have to understand that this will happen. And life is not going to fit inside our little boxes as much as I want it to fit inside my little Excel box where everything is balanced, right? It doesn't always happen that way.
You always love math?
I do love math. My original career that I went to college for is engineering. And so,
cool.
Yes.
I have a for engineering. I think it's like fascinating, but really hard.
Yes. I actually was an electrical engineer for 7 years at Motorola Freescale. And while there were parts of it that I liked, it wasn't fulfilling, if you will. And it wasn't the environment that I wanted to be in at all. And so this is so much more suited to my personality, talking to people and really helping them solve problems. It's still engineering with your money, if you will.
Right. It's really lost.
So yeah, I have always liked numbers. Yeah.
Okay. You got it easy. Is your husband like that too?
He's a visionary. He likes big picture numbers. He doesn't like the details, and I don't mind the details. So we balance out pretty well there, and that works for us. And I think That's not always the case. I think for couples, you do have to figure out, what do you enjoy doing? Actually, in my book, Naked and Unashamed, 10 Money Conversations Every Couple Must Have, there is a portion where you talk about like a skills assessment. Like, what do you like doing? Who likes paying the bills and gets like a sense of satisfaction from that? Or who likes to look at the big picture and save money? And who, which of you likes to deal with when the house needs some repairs? And you start thinking through like, who is best suited to these activities, and let each other fly. Now, the thing is, if one person likes doing all of it and the other person doesn't like doing any of it, then we're going to be mismatched, right? Like, so it doesn't mean get you a new partner. It just means let's make some new commitments so that we can see, okay, let's kind of balance this out. And since you've made the commitment, it's similar to household chores and things like that, and taking care of the kids. Like, it all has to get done. But if one person is doing most of the work, they're going to get burnt out. And so we've got to find ways to at least make it a bit more equitable so that both parties are not only involved, but they're doing something that they kind of like doing, or they get, like I said, a sense of satisfaction. You may not enjoy paying the bills, but you feel good knowing they're paid. That person probably ought to be paying the bills.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, back to our question.
Yeah.
if a partner is just like not following through, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So I think we have to reassess and say, what is missing here? So if it means that this particular category is not realistic, I mean, honestly, I find this happens a lot when people are constantly going out to eat for lunch, for instance. They're out and about, they work out of their car, or they're doing a lot of travel, and they think, well, food is a necessity. And they don't realize that $10 a day, every day for a month, is over $200, depending on how long the month is. And so when you think about what that can mean towards your plan or your savings or your budget, and if your budget is tight and you've got $200 is going to lunches, you got to reassess and say, okay, so we don't need to take it completely away. Maybe we say every other day, right? And maybe that person uses cash, and so it's only $25 a week. And then when it's gone, it's gone. And then you start making different choices. Maybe you go somewhere different. Maybe you take your lunch a couple days a week with you and you're intentional. Maybe the spouse helps with that kind of stuff. But I think we have to get to the source of why there's disagreement or why that person is falling off track. The other thing is, I find that people miss out on planning the fun in the budget. I think every budget has to have a little bit of fun, even if it's just like streaming movies or listening to music, or dining out could be the fun money, or whatever the kids' activities are. I mean, I think it's important that we don't miss out on those fun moments. And that is typically where people will tend to fall apart, right? Nowadays, I'm seeing people having issues with spending too much in Amazon, because Amazon comes tomorrow and then you realize, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much I spent in this category. And so I think that we have to add it up and have just a very serious conversation about, so what do we want to do? Is this in alignment with our goals? How do we move forward? Do not be accusatory, because next week or next month, it could be you, right? So, because again, I just really emphasize, we are not perfect. None of this is going to be a perfect journey. And you have to give some grace. I think it's super important to lead with grace, because if you lead with grace and you realize that this could be you, you'll have a much better attitude when you approach your partner on those kinds of things.
Oh yeah, I love what you said about getting to the core. It's not just putting on a Band-Aid. It's really understanding what's going on and getting creative of finding solutions. Like you said, it could be just finding a cheaper place, at least for now in the beginning, or something like that, so you could still go and eat your lunches.
I think the challenge for people is that they don't make enough time to go to the core of the issue. I think
everything, not just in money.
Absolutely. It takes time. You have to sit with it. You have to mull it over. You have to think about it. You have to do your research. And we just want to feel good. Let's just be honest. Like, we just want to feel good. We want to have fun. We do not want to get that serious. We think it doesn't take all that. And it does. It does take all that, because if you're very detailed, think about it. If that same $200 that was spent on lunches out didn't get spent on lunches and it went to debt reduction, in 1 year, that's $2,400. And in 2 years, that's almost $5,000. And when you think about what you can do with those kinds of dollars, that can make a huge difference. And it's worth a conversation to figure out where is the source of the issue so that you can move faster towards your goals.
Yeah. It's really getting deep to it. Yeah. That's
Mhm.
awesome. I love that. Okay. Now, what other important conversations do you think couples have to have?
I think people need to really sit down and talk about the future. Where do you see yourself in 1 year, 5 years,
In
20
general,
years?
not just money you're talking about.
Just in general, like what does life look like? Because we have lost our ability to dream. Our kids dream, they play, they have imaginations that are wild. And we do not take dreaming and having a good time and enjoying our future seriously enough. I mean, we get bogged down in the day-to-day life of going to work and having to pay bills and all the work that has to be done. And we don't realize that life is also to be enjoyed. And so, how can we ensure that that is a part of our game plan? Like, my husband and I have been going on couples trips now for this year we didn't go, but
Thank
we
you,
went on,
COVID.
yes, we went on 5 couples trips the last 5 years. And previous to that, we would make sure that there was someone who could watch our kids and who could so that we can get away. Like, we had to be intentional. And if there were one word I would say for couples to do is to be intentional about what you want. Speak it out loud, write it down, make a plan, talk to people who have been there because that's fun. You're creating the life you really want to live versus feeling like you're depriving yourself of everything in order to get there. Let's make it fun. My sister wasn't able to go on some trips this year too, and she has a vision. Like, she's been doing all these Zoom calls with people who are traveling, like who are in different places. This whole market that's raised up that you can pay a small sum to like see Italy and see Spain and do these things. And that's giving vision. Like, how fun is that? You
So
may not be
cool.
there, but you can make plans for the future by seeing all these places via video. And so have fun with it. Find ways to do those kinds of things together as a team so that you can, like I said, have a vision for the future.
Yeah, I love it. Or else life's just gonna happen and you're not gonna get anything you want. And then
That's
you're
right.
gonna grow 80 years old and I wish this and I wish that. That you
Hmm.
be intentional. I'm like, you got to travel everywhere. What was your favorite
Yeah.
place that you went to go? That you went to?
Actually, we have been to China. Yes, we took our girls. That was the biggest trip they had been on when they were younger. And I had some friends, they lived behind us. They were neighbors of ours, and they went to China as expats. And so one of them worked for a company that sent him out there. And we were like, okay, we're coming. Like, I mean, this is the chance of a lifetime to go to China. And so we're coming to stay with them. And we were able to walk the Great Wall, and we went to Tiananmen Square. And I mean, it was pretty amazing. It was not a relaxing trip by any stretch, because there was a lot of history that we were looking at and experiencing.
It's
But
different, not just sitting on the beach. It's different.
yeah,
I
it's
like that
different.
those type better. Like
Still,
exploring and seeing is so much more fun in my opinion.
yeah. So that whole thing was great. And because they had lived there, they were able to be good guides for us as well. So that was probably the most, I would say, impactful trip that we have been on. We've been on some of those beachy trips too, but that one will definitely stand out forever.
So you stayed by them so you didn't have to pay for accommodations.
We stayed 3 days in accommodations in a hotel in Beijing, but then we spent the other week. We spent a week and a half there. We spent a week with them at their place. So yeah, I mean, you can manage that
You
a
work
little bit.
that out
The
too.
flight was the most expensive thing, and then the sightseeing starts to add up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. What was the most challenging part in getting out of debt?
Honestly, waiting. I mean, you want it. I mean, honestly, most of us think, I want to get out of debt. I'm going to get out of debt. And then you make a plan and then you pay a payment and you're like, oh my God, I'm not out of debt yet. Like, and it's not an overnight process. So it took us 5 years. And it would have taken us less time if we hadn't tripped over ourselves and honestly got further into debt and did stupid things. And so I think that the hardest thing is sticking with it, being disciplined for a period of time so that you can see the finish line, and pay the last thing off. And I think a lot of people get distracted, especially when it's more than 2 or 3 years. It's easy to get distracted. So that's why I do coaching, because it helps people to see that you need to stay on track. And so I've actually had a client who paid off $200,000 in debt. Like, they rocked it, but their goal was to be able to retire. They were in their late 50s when we started working together, and they were not going to be able to retire. Actually, the husband retired and still had to work. And no one wants that at the age of 60. Who wants that? And so that motivated them. And I think working with them routinely for several years until they saw their finish line was huge. And they said it on multiple occasions: we wouldn't do this budget if you didn't sit here and talk to us through it. And so that, just knowing that people are able to see that kind of freedom, keeps me moving forward.
Awesome. Also, I love that. Okay, last question I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
Ask everyone. How would you describe an extraordinary relationship without using the words love, relationship, and connection?
How would I describe an extraordinary relationship? A good companion is an extraordinary relationship. Someone that you can confide in, someone who has your best interest at heart. I think that is huge. If I were to describe anyone in my life that matters, they have my best interest at heart and want to see me win, and I want to see them win. And that's in any area of their life. If they're being successful, reaching their goals, if they just look good that day, I'm like, you are winning. I love it. And so that probably is the biggest thing, is, someone who really has my best interest at heart, or someone in whom I can see that they are encouraged by just our conversation and us being in relationship together.
Awesome. I love that. This is great. Thank you so much, Ericka. I loved this.
Yes, this was so much fun.
Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much, and have an awesome day.